Trigger warning, this video discusses depression and suicidal thoughts in a recovery context. If you're struggling right now, you are not alone, and there are resources down below. This story still makes me emotional to talk about it. It was May of 2020, and I was all set to graduate as the valedictorian of an Ivy League school. But I was sitting in a psychiatric ward. That's how depressed I was. At the end of the day, my academic achievements, like becoming the valedictorian, and my professional achievements, like getting a job at Google, these didn't matter when I was considering to end my own life. My external life looked gorgeous, but the truth was that I wasn't okay. I was so sad that I couldn't imagine living another day. I really didn't ever think I'd be sharing this personal story. This is my first video on the Overachievers Anonymous channel. And yeah, I am a little nervous about being vulnerable and sharing my struggles with mental illness. It would be easier to try to maintain this curated, successful, professional persona on the internet, but that's just not authentic to me or truthful to you. So I'm hoping you'll be able to learn from some of my mistakes in this story time and come away with the lesson that I did, which is that success means nothing if I'm not happy. Welcome to Overachievers Anonymous, your cozy space for recovering from overachievement. If you're exhausted from trying to earn your worth, you're not alone. Let's heal, rest, and redefine who we are together without accomplishment. I'm your host, Jessica Ming Tao, and I'm really excited for today's story time. It is a deeply personal story to my mental health journey, so I hope that you enjoy it and can learn from some of my shortcomings and lessons along the way. So let's start by taking it all the way back to high school. I grew up in the suburbs of Indiana, in a small town where not a lot of folks make it to the Ivy League. A lot of people grew up in Indiana, study there, live there, die there. But that was not going to be my path. I struggled a lot in high school, to be honest with you. There was a lot of bullying that I was struggling with. And I think that was because I was dating a couple boys, dating a couple girls, and the kids in my AP classes were like, that's a dirty I was not super accepted by the kids in my AP classes, so I felt lonely a lot of the time. However, I was keeping myself really busy. I was taking all the AP classes possible, playing varsity tennis, playing violin in the school orchestra, and also as an editor in the school newspaper. So the schedule was full, and I was so motivated to study hard so I could leave Indiana. This bullying was really intense, really harmful, really hurtful. A lot of it was taking place online because suddenly, Tumblr and Ask FM had come into the world, which was perfect for cyberbullying, by the way. The bullying got so bad that I was researching how to transfer schools, and I felt really depressed. I was just constantly questioning my self-worth. Who am I? Why are my peers being so cruel to me? During those difficult times, I spent a lot of my childhood on Tumblr and on YouTube. So I knew that all of the cool, happy Asian kids were in LA. I wanted to be like those cool Asian YouTubers that I grew up with. Thus, one of my dream schools was UCLA, and I was fortunate enough to be admitted into UCLA as a freshman. I didn't know much about UCLA, but all I knew was that I needed to escape the Midwest, and UCLA was my ticket out. However, there was a slight plot twist. I did apply to nearly all the Ivy League schools and was rejected from all of them, but one. Cornell University. They gave me a guaranteed transfer option. Essentially, I would be admitted into Cornell as a sophomore transfer as long as I got a 3.5 GPA at another four-year institution. I never heard of this deal, but it sounded like a sick deal to me because I thought double the schools, double the friends. I could check out LA, but I can also check out New York and be a couple of hours away from New York City. I was really excited. And so I went into UCLA with the mindset, I'm gonna have fun, but I am definitely getting above a 3.5 GPA so I can transfer to Cornell. My freshman year at UCLA was insanely fun. It was ridiculous. We were going to the beaches, hitting the clubs, eating the best Asian food, and I finally felt free. I felt like I was really becoming who I was meant to be because I was finally meeting people that looked like me, like other Asian kids who maybe didn't grow up around people that look like them, but now we're all here vibing, kikiing, having an amazing time. I even joined a hip-hop competition dance team, which is the most stereotypical LA thing you can really do. And I also took some really interesting classes like in game theory or in Asian American studies. I really love this time period of my life, and I do consider it to be some kind of like cultural renaissance for me really coming into my identity as an Asian woman. I really finally felt like I belonged. I was also definitely being challenged by the rigor of the academics, but I did end the freshman year with a 3.9 GPA and was able to transfer to Cornell. It was a really tough decision to decide to leave UCLA because I was so happy. There really was nothing wrong. It was just that I was so curious about what Cornell could be like. What would it mean to go to an undergrad business school? What would it mean to study in New York? I was really excited by this possibility, and I felt like I would really regret this chance, this opportunity, if I didn't grasp it. And yeah, that's why I did go back to Indiana for the summer in between UCLA and Cornell, and worked at a Jimmy John's. Very dark days. But you know, level number 4, a turkey tom with extra mayo, extra onions. The real ones know the good orders. Anyway, that summer at Jimmy John's was really traumatic and really didn't prepare me that well for Cornell, but I made $7.25 an hour that summer and needed the change. So after that traumatic summer, I moved to Ithaca, New York to start studying at Cornell. There was so much whiplash after transferring into Cornell. I had never met so many members of the 1% before, and I had never seen so many $2,000 winter jackets just laying across the fraternity floor during, the parties in the winter. It overwhelmed me, truly. I remember during my sophomore fall, I applied to over 50 student organizations, clubs run by students. They were usually professional clubs, finance clubs, dance teams, consulting clubs, and I got rejected from 45 of them. It was really depressing, just refreshing that sweet email, trying to feel excited, like, oh, am I gonna get into this club? Am I gonna make these new friends? No, we regret to inform you. I regret this too. It was a really sad period of my life because I was desperately trying to really integrate into the Cornell community. I wanted to make more friends, see what college at Cornell could be like. But it's really difficult coming in as a sophomore because a lot of folks have already made their friends through freshman year. They're more acclimated to the school, the faculty, how to really navigate the system. So needless to say, I struggled at Cornell. Really, this was a theme that followed me from high school, feeling that like I wasn't enough, like I had something to prove to my classmates. I think a lot of these feelings did come from the fact that I was a transfer student, and at Cornell, there was a bit of a weird dynamic between the OG students that were accepted as freshmen and then the transfers that came in as sophomores. I feel like there were some elitist attitudes towards transfers, a bit of a divide, if you will, between the folks that got in earlier versus those that transferred in and came in later. So I feel like this was another reason for some of my initial struggles in transferring. It took me a while to adjust, but I ultimately did find my people. It It was incredible. Ultimately, it did take me a while to adjust to the Cornell community, but once I found my people, the experience became so much better. The clubs that I ended up joining were really exciting. For one, I joined another hip hop dance team and made some of my closest friends through there. This dance team was really where I learned how to not only hone my dance skills, but how to be a really supportive friend to someone in need, how to encourage my fellow dancers, and what it really meant to be free and express myself. I so loved my time with my dance team. I also joined a business fraternity, which was incredibly helpful in helping me prepare for interviews, case studies, the later professional world. Since I was enrolled in Cornell's business school, I wanted to make sure I would be set up to work really well in corporate or work really well in the startup life later. I took all of our case studies, our mock interviews, and our presentations very seriously, and this really paid off in the long run because it set me up for my internship at JP Morgan and being able to get a full-time job at Google. Overall, I met some great mentors and found really inspiring friends through my business fraternity. And finally, I also started my own club. Let's back it up for a second here, take a step back. For some context, I do identify as non-straight, as a queer person, and I was really looking for my community at Cornell. Surprisingly, Cornell didn't have any professional queer organizations I could join. There was a real lack because we have queer students, they're just hiding, they're somewhere. We have to bring them together. That's why me and one of my best friends, we co-founded the group, the Queer Professional Community, dedicated to uplifting the LGBT community at Cornell, making sure that we could succeed both on campus and beyond. This was an awesome project, but definitely not the easiest. Coming out at Cornell wasn't that comfortable. It was okay. Maybe I'll make another video on that experience later. To be honest, our first meeting only had 3 students. Me, my co-founder, and 1 interested student. But that's okay, because by the time I graduated, the group had grown to over 40 members. And we were a really special, tight-knit community that supported each other even after graduation. It was amazing. I am incredibly proud of this contribution to the Cornell community. I do believe that by starting this organization, this is what really caught the eye of the dean of the business school and the president of Cornell University. I was really making waves on campus and trying to enact positive social change, and they take note of that. Based on all the differences I had seen between the campus at UCLA and Cornell, it became really apparent to me that there's a gap here. We need to help students find their community. I felt really motivated to make a change for other transfer students or other non-straight students that didn't necessarily feel at home at Cornell yet. Starting this queer organization was really one of my most fulfilling experiences of college. Yeah, so overall, I was a pretty busy student. I maintained a 3.9 GPA, danced with my hip hop team, hung out with my business fraternity, and created positive change with the queer professional community that I started. On top of all of these ventures and being a full-time student, I also became a startup CEO. But that's oversimplifying it a little too much. Let's get into that story. In my junior year, I started taking design classes, and this is where I met my first co-founder. We were both passionate about the elder care space because, just for some context, we were both Chinese women who had been raised by our grandparents and felt this really strong tie to our grandma, our grandpa. We were both passionate about elder care and had different ideas for businesses that could make aging more empowering, make aging more independent, more pleasant. This was really born out of a love for our Chinese grandparents who had really raised us. So we came together to build a medical device that helped older adults maintain their hygiene, because we discovered that the longer that an older adult is able to care for themselves, then, the longer they're able to live independently, age independently, and don't have to necessarily go into assisted or higher touch living that they might not want. This medical device must have had 30 to 50 different iterations. It looks much different now than it first did back in 2019. I took this business through Cornell's Startup Accelerator, which was an amazing experience, and we even pitched our company on the 42nd floor of the World Trade Center in New York City. This was an incredible night for connecting with investors and VCs. I learned so much about entrepreneurship and starting this first business. It was so difficult, it was very stressful, but I wouldn't trade this experience for the world. Those 3 years and that steep learning curve taught me things about startups and entrepreneurship I never could have experienced had we not started that business for ourselves. The summer after I started that medical device company, I ended up going to New York City to complete an internship with JP Morgan in private banking. This internship was really intense, a bit of a fever dream, not gonna lie, I might make a video on it later. This internship taught me a lot, but the most important takeaway was probably that I wasn't really interested in doing this type of banking long term. So I'm very grateful for this internship. By my senior year at Cornell, I felt like I'd accomplished a lot, both personally and professionally. I had really stretched myself to take advantage of all the opportunities that the school had to offer, including my internships in Thailand and South Africa. However, something that I really neglected during the hustle was my mental and my emotional health. For overachievers who are taking on more than anyone realizes, asking for help can feel close to impossible. Even though I was collecting all of these accolades, I still felt incredibly empty and had a very low sense of self-worth. I derived all of my self-esteem from the value that I could bring to other people, so that in turn, they could encourage me and tell me that I was worthwhile. Because I really didn't believe in myself, I needed some external source, like another person, to tell me that, Jessica, you're doing a good job. It's a pretty odd mindset. I don't know why I needed to hear this validation from another person in order to feel valid, but that was just how my mind was working at the time. A lot of these wounds do come from my childhood, when I felt that love was conditional or dependent. I felt like I didn't know myself beyond the label of being like a good Ivy League student. The spring of senior year was a really dark time. Yes, I had already gotten my job offer from Google, but I didn't feel good about it. I didn't feel like I deserved to be there. I felt like I was living on autopilot each day, putting on a smiling face for my friends, and then suffering in silence. After the March 2020 lockdown, all 3 of my roommates moved home. Nearly everyone left Ithaca, but I stayed in my apartment there. I wanted to finish my lease. This was a very lonely time period that really caused my mental health to spiral. Like, of course, I was really freaked out by the pandemic, alarmed by all the uncertainty, and on top of that, I was totally alone in my Ithaca apartment. Between you and me, one of my greatest fears is losing my family. The support that I've received from my parents, my grandma, and my sister has truly been life-changing. I wouldn't be here today without all of their love. Like I mentioned earlier, I was raised primarily by my grandma, who I love so much. She is so kind, so loving, so funny. I really became who I am today because of her. When the COVID pandemic hit, my grandma was 89 years old and not in the best health. She passed away from complications due to COVID, and when my mom called me with the news, it just broke my heart. My world entirely shattered. All I wanted to do was see my grandma again. The next 3 weeks were a blur for me. I was finishing final exams, final projects, and homework assignments in between crying spells about how my grandma had just passed away. We had to host her funeral over Zoom. Writing that eulogy was one of the most difficult things I've ever done, but I know that it would have made her proud, and I just love her so much. So yeah, it was May of 2020. I had just been named the valedictorian of the business college, and I was 2 months away from starting my full-time job at Google. But I still hated myself. I couldn't see any kind of path forward. I just needed a break and wanted to see my grandma again. When I started writing my goodbye letter, something in my gut told me to call my best friend. I don't know what it was that day, but it was like, stop what you're doing, just call her and tell her the truth. The phone call lasted like 30 seconds. I'm so grateful she picked up. All I really said was, I'm about to end my life. Can you take me to the hospital? 5 minutes later, she was there. And we drove to the nearest Ithaca psych ward, and I was admitted. I am here today making this video for you because I asked for help. And my best friend understood the assignment, took me to get help so that I could save my own life. I am so grateful to my best friend for helping me get the medical attention that I received. I'll probably send her this video later, so thank you. Wow, that was quite the story time for the first episode of Overachievers Anonymous. Even while I was jotting down my video notes, I had to take a couple breaks because I was getting so emotional about this story. I hope that by the end of this video, you'll be able to learn from some of my mistakes and the lesson that I really took away, which is that success means nothing if I am not happy, and it's never too late to ask for help. Thanks for tuning in to the first episode of Overachievers Anonymous. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Bye! Stop. Before you go, join our rest club. If you're tired of having to prove yourself all the time, then our cozy email circle might be right for you. It's gentle support for recovering overachievers learning how to rest. The link is below if you want it. No pressure at all. All right, see you in the next video.